A young man walked through the streets of London and entered a construction site to visit his mother. She was in charge of the huge dig site. He got in an elevator and went down 200 feet into the earth. He hugged his mother, but there was a problem. Men who were digging called her out there as they had run into a huge void deep in the earth. The young boy took a flashlight and entered the tunnel into the void. He looked around and the cavern was immense. Suddenly, he saw liquid fire drop on the ground. He moved away from it and looked up. A mighty dragon was looking right at him. He got up and ran as fast as he could back to his mother. The dragon breathed a river of fire that burned through the entire cavern. The boy's mother put him in an elevator and sent him out of the cave. As the elevator crept up, the dragon emerged out of the tunnel, spread its massive wings, and flew into the sky. Over the next 3 decades, dragons took over the world. Thousands and thousands were born and dominated the sky. They breathed fire and crumbled cities to the ground, fed relentlessly on humans, and forced the remaining humans underground to live out their lives in constant fear.
Knowledge is the only weapon we've got left. In the beginning, it was ignorance that destroyed us. I saw the first, but soon the world saw millions. No one knew how they spawned so fast. They swarmed like locusts, burning everything in their path, driven by one purpose: to feed. They're starving now, and they're more dangerous than ever. But we have to go on. We have to outlast them. Only one species is getting out of this alive.
The young boy who woke the first dragon had grown up to lead maybe the last colony of people left alive. His name was Quinn, and like most of the rest of the people, was dirty and tired. He felt like the only way to beat the dragons was to outlive them. He had his colony stay underground and try and survive. Without eating humans, the dragons would starve and then die out completely. But not everyone in his colony wanted to live like that. One night, when Quinn and his friend were putting the colony's kids to bed with a special prayer, a group of men snuck out of the castle camp and went to the fields to harvest some food.
What do we do when we wake?
Keep both eyes on the sky.
What do we do when we sleep?
Keep one eye on the sky.
What do we do when we see them?
Dig hard, dig deep,
Run for shelter and never look back.
Quinn was alerted of this when a trained eagle crowed and flapped its wings. A predator was in the air. A dragon soared over the castle and headed towards the fields. It cast a giant shadow over the humans in the field as they huddled close together, waiting for their last breath. The dragon spread its mouth and a stream of fire flooded out, scorching the fields and the humans. The field burnt to a crisp, and Quinn and his colony were now without much hope of survival. Days passed and hope was fading. Then, the eagle crowed and flapped its wings again. Quinn and his people gathered weapons and rushed to the castle walls and gazed out upon the barren land. Rolling up the path was an army of trucks and tanks. They hadn't seen anything like this for years. The tank stopped at the front gate and a man got out. He was dirty, with piercing blue eyes, a bald head, and muscles all over. He was young and intense. His name was Van Zandt, and he was a military leader. He asked who was in charge, and Quinn went out to meet him. He asked Quinn if he and his men could stay there for one night, but Quinn refused. But then Van Zandt pulled off a necklace from around his neck. At the end of the chain was a large tooth. He showed it to Quinn and told him that he had a way of hunting and killing the dragons.
You ever seen one of these? Not many men have. Got out the first one I killed.
So now you're a dragon killer. That's not even original.
We were caught in the open. The sun was setting behind us. There's nowhere to run. Twice it came in on us, and twice it missed the heart of us. And that's when I had an epiphany. You see, they have great vision in the day. They have even better vision at night. But in the failing light, they can't focus. Magic out.
Quinn looked deep into his eyes and thought he was crazy, until he looked up and saw a helicopter flying in the air. He hadn't seen anything in the air other than dragons in decades. He let Van Zandt and his men enter the colony and stay overnight. As the day broke and the sun began to rise, the colony was alerted again. A dragon was in the area. Van Zandt and his men got ready, and a woman named Alex started up the helicopter with 4 men called Angels. She flew into the sky where the dragon was roaming with no fear. Meanwhile, Quinn and his people fled into the castle and down into the cellar. Quinn then went to the wall to watch what was about to happen. 3 soldiers rode motorcycles in different directions and planted radio signals into the ground. 2 soldiers did this right away, and a partial map of the area was up for Van Zandt to direct Alex where to go. The 3rd man was down as he was melted and eaten by the flying dragon. Quinn jumped on a horse and rode to where the man was positioned. He stuck the radio signal on the ground and the full picture was up. Van Zandt saw the dragon on radar right as it swooped behind Alex in the helicopter. Alex flew up into the clouds to lose it. When she was high enough, the 4 angels jumped out of the helicopter and flew through the air. It wasn't long until the dragon flew after one of them. It was gaining ground and about to launch its flames from its mouth when 2 angels behind them shot nets that attached to its wings, causing it to fall. They had done it, but suddenly they saw the nets detach and the dragon was lost in the clouds. It came racing out of nowhere and ate each man one by one before they reached the ground. Van Zandt's men were gone, but he still wanted to win. He called out to Quinn on the radio and told him to ride the horse like the wind and bring it towards his position.
You ready to ride? Because you got about 30 seconds. You bring her to me. You're the bait, Quinn. 1,600 pounds of horse flesh. Ride her right down my throat. Do you read me? Bring her to me, Quinn.
Quinn hopped on the horse in a flash and headed towards Van Zandt. As he rode, he looked back and heard the dragon's giant wings flapping. It was getting closer and closer. Quinn approached the top of the hill, and right when he got over it, a giant spear flew right by him and struck the dragon right as it opened its mouth to devour Quinn. The dragon crashed and tumbled to a stop. It was gone. The whole colony was happy and celebrated, everyone but Alex and Van Zandt. Although they had killed a dragon, there were still thousands more out there, and there was no way they could win killing one at a time. Van Zandt and Alex had a theory about how the dragons mated and gave birth. There had to be one male dragon and the rest were female dragons. If they got to the male dragon and took him out, then the rest would die out eventually.
And we tracked the epidemiology of these things and we found out where they're from, and that is why we're here. We kill the male. We kill the species. We're going to London.
Good luck. It's that way.
Quinn thought they were crazy, but he knew where the male dragon lived. It lived in London, where he saw it for the first time years and years ago when he was a young boy. Just then, a dark shadow cast itself over the castle. Women and children shrieked and ran for their lives. The biggest dragon ever seen saw the dead dragon and was furious. It breathed fire and flame all over the castle, melting it almost instantly. The dragon showed no mercy and flew over the fields of food and burned those again. It flew away, leaving nothing but ash behind. Luckily, Quinn and most of his colony were deep underground and were safe, but they had no shelter, no food, and nothing left to live for. Quinn was furious and he told Van Zandt he would go with Alex and Van Zandt to take out the male dragon that had just melted everything. The 3 of them took to the helicopter and flew close to the ground so that the dragons wouldn't see or hear them coming.
You, me, and Alex. Down the coast in the chopper. Stay tight to the cliffs. The Thames will take us right into the heart of London. I know where he lives. Magic Hour.
They touched down near the water and climbed the stairs to look out at the crumbled city. Dragons were everywhere. There must have been 100 of them. They all flew away when the male dragon showed up and scared them off. The 3 of them snuck into the city using underground tunnels, but they didn't get very far when the dragon shrieked, letting them know that he saw them. They devised a plan to try to take this massive enemy out for good. They split up and each of them took an explosive arrow with them. Van Zandt climbed a tower and waited. He gave Alex the signal and she ran out into the open towards him. The dragon swooped down and breathed a stream of flames behind her. It looked up and saw Van Zandt and flew towards him. Van Zandt shot his explosive arrow right at its nose, but it exploded when the dragon blew fire at him. It had wounded the dragon, but that was it. It flew away and came back at full speed. Van Zandt, with only an axe, took off running and leaped off the tower swinging his axe at the dragon in a last heroic effort. The dragon ate him whole. Quinn picked up his explosive arrow and he and Alex dove for cover. The dragon flew around the sky once again and flew right down into the middle of the city. The dragon knew where they were and started melting everything around him with his fire. Quinn had no choice. He ran out into the open to draw the dragon's attention. He stood in front of the dragon and looked at it in its eyes. The dragon slowly opened its mouth, ready to burn Quinn right then and there. Quinn quickly raised his arrow and shot it right into the mouth of the dragon. The force of the explosion lifted Quinn 20 feet into the air and sent him crashing to the ground. But the dragon had been slain. Months later, we saw Quinn, Alex, and the colony planting new fields without fear and without an eye on the sky. No dragons had been seen for months, and finally humans had a bright future to look forward to. The end.